Hello and welcome to the Classic Car Weekly Podcast, the sibling podcast to the popular weekly title. I'm this week's host, Jesse Billington, and we're back in our Peterborough HQ for another episode. And this week I'm joined by editor David Simister.
Hello.
And our deputy editor now, Chris Hope. I nearly said the wrong title.
No problems, thank you. Great to be here.
And, well, we're back with obviously what's been a very interesting week in news, generally speaking, across the UK. But more importantly, we've been trying to frame this to sort of classics, but we'll get to that in due course. We'll kick off as we usually do with an Our Classics catch-up. Anything to update from either of you two?
Yes, I was going to say the simplest of repairs turned out, as usual, to be the most frustrating. On my 1998 Toyota Apprentices, it needed new windscreen wipers. I went down, got a brand new set, and don't know if anyone's ever had this before. I went to put it on, and the plastic in the joining mechanism snapped immediately as soon as I put it on, and I was so very frustratingly. I had to then go all the way back out to the shop to get another one, and that went on straight away. But it's I was speaking to my mechanic friends, and it's more common than you think. Apparently, depending on how long plastic components like wipers have been sat for, the plastic can go very brittle, and it can snap almost the second you pull it out of the box, even before you get it onto the car.
Yeah, sort of fading before you've even picked it up from the shops, just where it's sort of sat there for a little while. That's a bit frustrating, but
very frustrating. I mean, it's only what £2.70, and it was. It was a case of the second one went on straight away, no problem. But it's just one of those little. It's the classic thing of you're only ever 2 bolts away from a short problem being a weekend's worth of work, isn't it?
Yeah, you're only ever 2 strip threads away from sort of a month-long project. All of a sudden, it's one of those cases.
Yeah, quite absolutely.
Chris,
It's these modern classics.
Why that's that feeding back? Try that again.
Hello.
That's fine.
Sorry about that.
A little bit weird.
It's these modern classics, isn't it? That sort of favour sort of plastic over sort of stainless steel sort of thing. So it just makes me think of the chap who I was speaking to who owns an XJS, who was thrilled that he was able to secure a set of period correct stainless steel sort of arms that he was able to reuse almost immediately sort of thing. So yeah, unfortunate, but at least it's fixed now.
Yeah, I mean, the other good news is my MX-5. I'm very pleased about the fact that, because it has been a bit wet and windy, I'm sure everyone will have spotted, but I'm very glad that I got the roof replaced last year, because it's a lot better than it was this time last year. There's no mushrooms growing in it now. Perfect.
I was about to say it's not holding water. It's not got water in it at all to hold, more importantly, is more the case with it, I suppose.
That's pretty much, yeah. So the roof is actually... You're doing the job that is intended, so it's 600 quid well spent.
Have you looked at getting a cover for it while it's sort of parked out in the open? Even just one of those sort of short ones that just covers the cabin area might do the trick.
I have had different covers over the years, and I think I'm probably going to get another one, but I tend to find they can be very hit and miss depending on because what you don't want to have is you're trapping moisture inside
under
it.
Yeah.
That's the biggie, and sometimes that can be you can do more harm than good sometimes.
Yeah. Chris, we haven't had you on the podcast for a little while, so we haven't had sort of an in-person update on what's going on with your
That's
classic.
okay. You've not missed anything.
Well, did we have you on in person to talk about taking it to the Peak District?
Yeah,
we did. Yeah, we've done that bit.
I think that was the last thing that we discussed, because I was like, I can't remember that seemed like ages ago. I can't.
We almost need one of those previously on the CCW podcast.
Yeah.
No, the poor thing is sat. It's sat in the garage, and it is waiting its opportunity to have its engine out. So with the best one in the world now, I'm probably looking at after Christmas with various commitments and things that I need to take care of during the festive period. But I don't want it to sort of find a situation where it stagnates sort of thing. So I do want to do these jobs myself. So just to recap, it's leaking like a sieve, and I've been recommended by a specialist simply to get the engine out and just do all of the oil seals. So that's something I want to do. I've not really done anything along those lines before, so there's a little bit of me that wants to do it for those reasons. But likewise, if it's getting to a point where it's getting away from me, I don't want to miss out on 2026 season. So if it means that I need to suck it up and ask a specialist to do the work for me, then that's what I will look into. But plan A very much is still to do it myself. So
yeah, easy to let those projects start to run away.
Best of intentions,
Yeah.
all of that. So yeah, no, exactly. I don't want to miss out. I don't want to get to April and they're still not being done, and then find a situation where I'm having to sort of put things on ice, sort of thing. So yeah, there's other things that I will need specialists to do as well. So I need to get the suspension looked at. There's various other bits and pieces as well. It's winter, and there's no events that are on my horizon, sort of thing. So there's no desperate need to sort of bring it out in this weather as well. So yeah, it's entered kind of a hibernation stage, and I want to make the most of that period to get the jobs done that need doing. So.
Yeah, I know that the MG has a list of jobs that I need to sort of finally tackle on it. But I mean, it is the subject of this week's Our Classic Spread, actually. Obviously, it is back on the road and been out and about we've been picking up the miles, actually. Obviously, we finished that project in September. It literally got it properly running before the revival. Obviously, I think we mentioned it on the podcast at the time. Had my mate round to sort of tune it up. It's been on the rolling road, dialed in. Since then, we've had it over at Bicester Heritage for the scramble on the first weekend in October, which was very nice. Took it over to the Essex coast for a sort of proper long run out and a nice sort of weekend away. And then after that, it's been up to the NEC as well for the Classic Motor Show, which was great to put it back on a stand at the NEC where it had been earlier on in the year, completely without an engine.
Yes.
So it sort of nicely sort of rounded that circle out, which has been, sort of just a pleasing way to sort of round out the year. And then obviously drove it back from the NEC, parked it in the garage, and thought I'll finally tackle the sort of mangled radio that's been left in the car since I bought it. Pulled out the old head unit, built up a new wiring loom for the old radio we'd pulled out of the Mustang a few years back, which was still sitting around. Plumbed that all in, had to do a load of rewiring to the speakers at the back of the car because they were dead. So this involved sort of various bits of sort of tester wiring and sort of checking it to speakers that I know work, going, okay, I know that I've got output coming from the radio. I know that those speakers work. I know that these speakers work, chasing through bits and pieces, basically undoing the rat's nest of wiring that the previous owner had put in when they installed it. And I'm not an expert when it comes to doing anything electrical, but the job looks a hell of a lot tidier, and that's after my handiwork has been sort of laid into it. So, yeah, deeply pleased with that. The fact that I can now listen to at least audio cassettes while driving around in that car. Haven't fitted an aerial to it. It didn't come with one. There is the cutout for it in the front wing, and there is the little black blanking plate. But I like the sort of
Is there a need for it? I mean, you can literally buy a Bluetooth radio and that can play through. So I don't know. I'd be wary about drilling any holes.
That's the thing. I don't want to mangle any more body panels or anything in that way. And more often than not, I just have my headphones in. I'm listening to sort of stuff through my phone anyway. I just wanted a nice, vaguely sort of period-looking radio head unit to sit in the car just to more aesthetically finish it than anything else, and know that it's safely wired in, and if needs be, it will work and I can put tapes on through it. I'm wondering where on earth all my cassettes are, because I did have a fairly big collection of them between Dad and I.
I was going to say, can you not go around some charity shops?
I was going to say, I'm going to have to start sweeping around charity shops. My plan is to try and buy sort of the greatest hits of 1979, because 79 car, basically get a load of T-Reg audio tapes. And I was sort of looking through like great albums that released that year. I think you've got AC/DC's Back in Black. I think Earth, Wind and Fire had an album out that year. I think there was a great one from ELO as well. So there's a lot of really good albums that I need to just basically go. If you at home have any cassette tapes of the best albums of 1979, send them into the usual address, because I'd very much like them. But yeah,
you'll get a shout out.
Yeah, you'll get a shout out. You're going to mention, send in a letter.
We know that if in 2 weeks' time we hear like if we hear a 1500 throb, with the just sort of drowned out by the sound of ELO and the Police, then we know that
the Police. They had a great album.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So
was it Message in a Bottle? I can't remember. But yes. Yeah, send in your tapes or your suggestions of albums that I should get for the MG's tape collection. Was in the workshop with it last night as well, trying to figure out why the starter motor had seemingly packed up. It spins up, but Bendix just completely refused to come off its little spline and engage with the flywheel. So went and dug out the spare one from the back shed, had it sort of attached to the jumper pack. I was like, that's spinning up, and a bit of a clean down. It's sort of throwing the gears, and I'm like, okay, maybe this will be a straightforward swap. I'll just check the other one with the booster pack on the battery. Turns out it's just the battery was a bit cold and sort of wasn't putting out enough juice to spin it fast enough to throw the gear off the little splines, and then sputtered into life perfectly happily and sat there idling in the workshop. So it's going to go for a winter tune-up at my mate's again just to get it better set for the colder weather. But otherwise, we're in a good way. So hopefully going to take it to Silverstone in a few weeks for a wintry trip out to the Lap of Lights, which you'll be able to.
The Lap of Lights.
I've done it before quite a few years ago when Silverstone sort of were trying to figure out how to make money during COVID, and they went, "We've got a lot of fairy lights here. What if we just put those?"
I love it. It's a great idea.
And they've sort of really doubled down on it. It will be in next week's issue of Out and About. The Lap of Lights bit will be, so there's sort of details on that. So keep an eye on that, and hopefully we'll get the MG along to it soon. But we'll get on to more serious matters, and of course concerns the budget, which obviously came out last week. David and I are paying sort of great attention to it, and obviously thankfully it was released early as well, which gave us a great head start to flick through the
Thank
PDF.
you, AVR.
Great chance to flick through the PDF, just searching for like heritage vintage car, just trying to find anything, and mercifully we seem to have escaped unscathed.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've talked about in this week's issue being a bit of a mixed bag for classic owners, but the key thing is historic tax exemption floated by various people, including in our pages, as being possibly at risk, as Rachel Reeves looks to sort of claw back costs to mitigate the cost of the living crisis. But I think it's really pleasing that she's looked at the historic vehicle movement as a part of the economic solution, not just as an easy source of revenue. So we know that sort of more than 690,000 people are currently owners of tax-exempt vehicles, and they contribute more than £7.3 billion every year to the nation's economy. So clearly the amount of revenue that's being generated by doing that is worth more than the tax than the money she would have got through taxing people for cars that do a very minimal mileage every single year.
Yeah, and I think if we view it in that sense of there's sort of more to be gained from leaving the industry to be sort of self-prosperous and sort of feed back in, it's a great way to think that sort of classic opinions have been listened to in the halls of Whitehall, which is always promising.
I think that's it. And I know there have been some conversations here at Westminster about how to make sure that our hobby is supported, and I think it's hugely important that it does, given the amount of jobs it supports and how many people see the classics as being important to the nation's heritage.
But the mixed bag element, the negative side, I think, comes from the fact that we feel that more could be done to support the specialists within the classic car industry.
Yeah, and I think this is something that's going to be felt by lots of different small firms, not just in the classic sector as well. I mean, we've talked about the impacts of some of the other sort of wider fiscal measures that Rachel Reeves has taken in the budget, including moves to obviously work on minimum wage and business rates as well. And obviously that's great in terms of supporting those joining the industry. But if you're an established specialist who's struggling to meet existing overheads, if you have to pay a little bit more to the Treasury every year, that makes things a little bit more difficult again. And the risk is that cost may well be passed on to the consumer who takes their car in to get it restored.
Yeah, I mean, Dominic Taylor Lane, who heads up the Association of Heritage Engineers, he sort of mentions that he has anecdotal sort of evidence of many sort of specialists sort of putting their apprenticeship programs on hold. I mean, now's the worst possible time to do that in terms of preserving sort of the knowledge that's needed to continue restoring cars, sort of thing. So
yeah, there's a crying need to get that knowledge out there to the next generation of restorers, and there have been great strides made by sort of the likes of the Heritage Skills Trust and so on. But we need more of it, because if there aren't enough people learning those skills, obviously a small amount of people are able to charge more money, which means that when you do take your car to get it rebuilt or whatever, that specialist labour is going to cost more. So it's in everyone's interest to make sure that the next generation of specialists gets the support that they need.
I mean, not to mention the fact that you can only work on one car at a time, can't you?
Yes,
at any given moment. So that's obviously going to have a knock-on effect in terms of how long it takes for your car to be restored. So I mean, there are good news stories in the apprenticeship side of things. I know, Jesse. I mean, is it worth mentioning those now?
I mean, we might as well touch on them, since we're sort of in the right ballpark to look at the apprenticeship stories. We've got one that even sits on the same spread as sort of our coverage of the budget, and this comes from the Midget and Sprite Club, interesting enough, and this was the announcement of their Most Improved Apprentice Award. This went to Rosie Fraser at EJ Ward, and again, it's this sort of great thing of clubs supporting these sort of ideas of apprenticeships and getting young people engaged with not just owning and having classic cars, but also the maintenance and the work that goes into sort of keeping heritage vehicle restoration sort of a thriving and sort of modern, up-to-date industry. And I'm really pleased to see sort of clubs, and especially a club that I'm part of, sort of leaning into that and heavily supporting it. So it's great to see this sort of move on. And obviously she's got £300, a 1-year membership of the club, and the trophy to go with it as well. So there's this sort of great encouragement for people to actively engage with it, and it's a promising sign. The other
great result, definitely.
Yeah. And the other one I know was features a little bit later was the RAC, the Royal Automobile Club's most sort of annual awards ceremony. And this was, again, another great one which celebrated in its Young Achiever Award, another sort of young sort of apprentice and sort of person engaging with sort of maintaining and reviving classic cars. This was Samantha Ruff, someone who actually I happen to know from just sort of around my part of the classic scene. And the sort of her work when it comes to sort of upholstery and retrimming. And again, it's one of those things, it's a very specialist task, but it's also something that's broadly applicable to not just classic and heritage cars. Modern cars need trimming, and a lot of sort of specialist and coach-built modern cars do still require trimming. It is one of those skills that's sort of evergreen and ever present. So it's a useful skill to have, but one that she loves sort of lavishing on classic and historic cars. And it's great to see, again, that celebrated. And again, the RAC has sort of looked at so many brilliant sort of classic related things that have sort of done well when it comes to their awards this year as well. I know that Thomas DeMarchas won for sort of solo enterprise when he tackled the Peking to Paris this year solo. There's been some really good ones when it comes to just classic cars sort of still remaining in the fore when it comes to motoring awards. Bear in mind, the RAC's awards were not historic based. They were sort of broadly spread across sort of everything. So it's a really interesting sort of time.
Getting that recognition, isn't it?
Definitely. Well deserved to see them in the spotlight.
But on the budget front, I think it's interesting because it does highlight this sort of very much sort of tug of war between wanting costs to be low for restorations, but at the same time wanting to support those apprenticeships. You can't have it both ways. You want to have these supported apprenticeships. You want to have these sort of viable paychecks to encourage young people to come into these industries, but at the same time, you want the sort of price you pay for the repairs, the restorations, the retrimmings, the re-engineering of your cars to be reasonable. So I think there is a middle ground to be found, but as long as the government keeps supporting the apprenticeships and sort of keeps incentivizing and making them financially viable for businesses, I think there's still sort of ground to be made up and a sort of promising future still to come when it comes to these apprenticeships. There is still sort of a lot of good progress to be made, and I think we've done well from the budget as a classic community.
Yes, I would agree with that assessment.
Elsewhere in our news page, I'm trying to remember what else we're going to cover. That was I wanted to touch on quickly the another RAC acronym. This time it's the Roger Albert Clark Rally. A tricky one to get on a very tired tongue. But this was, of course, the sort of enormous historic rally that took place all the way from deepest, darkest southwest Wales all the way up to Cumbria and touching in sort of the southern reaches of Scotland as well on essentially I think it was nearly a 6-day sort of rally that really put pace to a lot of the sort of drivers' entrance and the classic cars taking part. And there were some sort of heavy shunts and issues early on that wiped out a few front runners, including Lancia Stratos and an M3 that had both been performing fantastically. And the overall reaction from sort of the audience for it, and I think this was sort of one of its biggest years when it came to having people sort of spectating and enjoying it and showing support for sort of classics out and about and sort of putting pay to sort of what classics in period were engineered to do. A lot of these are sort of historic works cars or re-engineered to sort of classic rally standards. A lot of people out and really enjoying the scene and sort of enjoying classics.
And this is what it's all about. It's all about getting the historic vehicle hobby out there. You know, I mean, I think it's great whenever they have an event that sort of goes through a town or a city centre, because it shows the wider public what our hobby is about. And again, I know Drive It Day next year, I know that they're looking at doing a lot to try and raise money for charity as well, because getting that out there, it's obviously to the likes of us, obviously we are the preaching to the converted with us, but if they can get someone who's a member of the wider public to buy a classic car, then that's great, because it's our hobby expanding.
It's an expensive thing to do, isn't it? Ultimately, but that's why I love that juxtaposition within the story itself of having that Mark I Escort next to the MG ZR sort of thing. I think it's fantastic to see the more modern sort of metal sort of attempting these sort of feats of endurance as well, sort of thing. Just, doing it any way that you can to be involved in it, sort of thing. Because we know from sort of talking to other people that MG ZR for all, it's a modern classic. It can potentially serve as a stepping stone to something older once you see and immerse yourself in that scene, sort of thing. So,
oh yeah, I'm not saying that people need to rush out, buy a classic, and immediately tackle the Roger Albert Clark. It is a challenging thing for even the most experienced of rally drivers, but it's a case for seeing classics out and about for younger enthusiasts, where this was plastered across my social media across the sort of 5-6 days of the event. The coverage that the team behind it had put into sort of producing for its online platforms meant that this was one of the most accessible RAC rallies that I'd seen in quite some time. That meant a younger audience could see these cars out and about and doing something exciting, and if that incentivizes one of them to go out and buy maybe a Mark 1 Escort, but more likely, like you said, one of the more modern classics that was tackling this, like the MG ZRs and things, that's a great thing for the hobby if it's again incentivizing and showcasing that this is an exciting and vibrant hobby. Well, yes, classic motorsport is never ultimately going to be cheap by any definition of it, but it is a great means of showcasing the colour and the variety of the scene, and also the sort of technical side of it as well. I know Tony Jardine, who we sort of regularly converse with when it comes to rallying, he's ran the entire course this year in his, I think, in a Hillman Avenger, and he ran it with sustainable fuel as well. So it's a great sort of testing platform for showcasing how green classics can be, as well as how important they are socially. And again, to spectate this, bar a parking pass for £25, that's a day's entertainment, and there was hundreds of cars coming past throughout the course of a day, and you could sort of walk from special stage to special stage, so you'd see them come past several times, and it was brilliantly put together. I have to say, sort of doff my cap to the RAC team this year, because it was a phenomenal sort of display of this is how public classic cars can and should be.
Yes.
And just really exciting stuff. I think also I need to dive into it for the news section for a later issue. They've got a tarmac series coming in the future as well, which will be sort of a bit more accessible, and also again put classics out onto the fore. So there's a lot to look forward to.
It is worth plugging the Historic Rally Car Register. They hold their open day every year in January at the British Motor Museum. That event sort of very much sets the tone for all of the events rallying that they look after, sort of thing, and it sort of deals with experts through to first timers, sort of thing. So if anyone does have an interest in getting a sense of what's involved in taking part in these events, then that's a good place to sort of start. And even if not, then it just gives you some more potential events that you can go and spectate as well. So
down a similar line, Race Retro at Stoneleigh Park, which is second weekend in February, I think, off the top of my head, and that again is a great way of seeing sort of classic cars doing something exciting.
That's great, isn't it? Because you can see Group A rally cars going sideways and kicking up chunks of soil. So it's fantastic fun.
20th to the 22nd of February at Stoneleigh Park.
There we go.
Get it in your diaries.
Yeah, I think tickets are already on sale. I think we previewed it a week or two ago in the Out and About pages. It is a brilliant event. I absolutely loved covering it. I sort of got all my news coverage together on the Friday last year and went back so I could enjoy the rally stage this year as well, because it was just so much fun watching it all take place and sort of seeing, again, it's classic cars out and about doing something, being dynamic. And that's, as much as I love going around shows like the NEC and the restoration show, I love the idea of there being something dynamic to it. A car is more than just a static object, and seeing them in motion. That's why the resto show always appeals to me so much, is because there is that dynamic element to it. It's cars being worked on, it's engaging. And Race Retro always stands out for me because it is that little bit special, and you see some fantastic cars out and about doing brilliantly bonkers things and getting incredible.
It just shows how vibrant our hobby is, really. It's you can look at cars, you can take them sideways, you can polish them, you can do all sorts of fantastic things with them.
Again, I think we like to pat ourselves on the back a little bit when it comes to CCW. We've got a great breadth of sort of what classics mean, from both sort of the political side of things through to the simply seeing them out and about slithering around through like Kielder Forest and things. It is a between just sort of turning the page, you've got this great spread of what classics can mean. What else have we got on the running list for this week's issue? Let me see. We've touched on the budget. We've had a look at the Roger Albert Clark, and we've already mentioned the awards and celebrations of young enthusiasts. Gents, have you got anything else you'd like to chuck in? David, I know you've been looking at the auction scene as well.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I thought was quite interesting this week's issue, well worth reading more about, is the Mathieson Stars of Bangers and Cash. They are launching a new way of looking at cars online, so they're launching effectively a scrutineering process if you're thinking about buying a car. Quite an interesting development, because we've seen a lot since the pandemic. Auctioneers upping their game in terms of how well you can view a car remotely. Obviously, lockdown played a big part in this, and even though restrictions are long gone and hopefully remain that way, the habits of buying online, the lessons they've learned from the pandemic are still very much in play, and it means that if you're looking to buy a classic car and you can't get up to North Yorkshire, or I know there are some quite for a lot of people some quite far-flung auctions in lots of different parts of the UK. If you can't get to see the car yourself in person, you can have a reasonably confident stab at seeing that car, and knowing that what you're buying online isn't necessarily going to be a pup when it comes to picking it up.
Yeah.
That was something, I know that was something that was echoed a bit by iconic auctioneers when they were talking at the HCVA conference earlier this year. They said sort of the growth that they've seen in engagement and sales by using online platforms and using sort of online sale elements has been huge. And the fact that you sort of get the videos, you get the high quality imagery that goes with it that really pushes the sale, but also increases sort of buyer confidence as well. They've seen the car in more detail than they would have done if it was just 5 or 6 images uploaded to a website. You've got the walk around videos, you've got the detail that goes into it is a lot more sort of engaging and confidence building.
It's not an excuse for laziness, though, is it? I think a lot of the auction companies that I've sort of spoken to is that whether you go and look at a car in person or whether you view various videos that are made available online, you need to come at that with some sort of knowledge in terms of what you're looking for, what you are expecting, and what needs to be there, sort of thing. You should have your follow-up questions ready before you've even seen the video, sort of thing, is the gist of it. So yes, and it's one of those situations whereby maybe when you see it in person, that serves as an opportunity to sort of just think that little bit deeper. But it shouldn't be used as an excuse just to, I saw a video of it, therefore it must be okay. The responsibility still very much lies with the buyer. The auctioneers will give as honest account of it as they can, but ultimately the responsibility lies with the buyer to make sure that they're checking everything that they need to check. The auctioneers are not going to do that job for you. So
yeah, I have seen that as a discourse on various sort of social media platforms where people have said, I sort of bought this at auction and it never lived up to the quality, and someone said to them, did you go and actually see it before you bought it at auction? They went, no, I just bought it online and thought it'd be fine. Because I was like, well, you bought a car sight unseen online. You get what you get with that. That's like famously,
you've rolled the dice, and unfortunately, it's not come out the way you wanted it.
Yeah, it is a stab in the dark. But again, hopefully, Matheson's and other auctioneers are throwing a little bit more light on the subject to help you make a more informed decision before you do.
Oh, it's certainly it's a great step, and I think giving buyers as much information as possible is a great way of forearming them. But equally, at the same time, you and I can both speak for this.
Yeah.
Nothing beats going and looking at a car in person before actually buying it at auction. I think it is one of the most important steps you can take, and I think it is sort of the best way of doing it.
There's only so much that auctioneers can do, and they're doing an awful lot for you already, sort of thing. Yeah. So the least you can do is make sure that you're taking care of the rest of it. So you need to know what your requirements are, and auctioneers aren't going to know that. They're not going to know whether you're looking for a car that is something you're going to hop in and drive away immediately, or something you're going to take off the road and improve over the next year or so. They're just not going to know that sort of thing. So they can give you all the information they can, but it's up to you to then decide whether it's actually the right car for you.
Yeah, it's the onus is still on you to make sure you're making the right decision for you. Elsewhere in the issue, obviously we've got a lovely feature looking at the Rover 200, the R3, as it turns 30 this year, which is
absolutely what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Again, Keith Adams, absolute authority on this era of cars, sort of thing, and he's done an absolutely stellar job in terms of just setting the context behind what is now a fast disappearing car on our road sort of thing. So I had sort of vague recollections of this car when I was younger. I remember my dad had one as a company car, and it was quite the step down from the BMW 3 Series E36 that he had. So he never had anything particularly nice to say about it. But it's another classic example of a what if sort of thing. That idea that this was the first Rover to sort of be styled by Rover without input from any sort of Japanese manufacturers, and they got so much right, apart from the money that they wanted to charge for it. So it's that idea that Keith really does a really sort of deep dive into the fact that it was pitched as being an Astra rival rather than a Corsa rival, a Golf rival rather than being a Polo rival. And it sounds quite small and trite detail, but it made an absolute difference to this car's fortunes. I actually took myself away to watch the Englishman in New York launch advert, and I thoroughly recommend that you search it on YouTube and have a look, because it very much sort of sets the tone in terms of what this car was the people that it was aimed at sort of thing. And again, if you sort of, I think it is a car that still looks good today, still has that upmarket feel, but it's not quite upmarket enough to have sort of done what it needed to do in terms of the market sector it was aimed at. The back seats were just a bit too sort of tight for rear occupants, and the interior, as nice as it was just a little bit too basic for the price that they were asking. But what I really enjoyed was just Keith sort of going into the detail of how they did turn this around, how the range was expanded. Obviously, you got the Rover BRM, and then from that you got the MG Z cars from it as well, sort of thing. I've not looked into the sort of the remaining numbers. I don't know. Maybe it's just I'm looking for them because we've had them previously as project cars, but I tend to see a lot more ZRs than I do genuine 200s sort of thing. So I think it is a fast disappearing car, and I think it is definitely worth a look. Read this, and I think it might inspire you to sort of try and find the classifieds to get one, sort of thing, because I think it will tick a lot of boxes for a lot of people. So.
Yeah, I think the ZR survived a bit more because it was that sort of performance-oriented thing. And if you look at things like Festival of the Unexceptional, that's prime sort of Rover 200 or sort of 25 hunting ground, because it is the sort of forgotten, the sort of the base trim, the sort of lower spec ones. Performance cars often tend to live a little bit longer because you've got that sort of aspirational element to them. And, what was the title that used to be produced in this office that was sort of all modified performance cars?
Max Power.
Max Power. The ZR... I would argue that Max Power did a great deal for prolonging the life of the MG ZR, because it became that sort of enthusiast, that performance car, the one that you modified, the one that you wanted and enjoyed, whereas no one really Max Powered a 200.
Yes, I think it's the image, isn't it, sort of thing. So I think in its later years, Rover has become more associated with a slightly sort of older sort of clientele of owners, where the MG didn't much to book that as sort of it was explicitly aimed at a youth sort of buyer, a youthful buyer sort of thing. So I don't see any reason why that should hold, sort of thing. So I mean there are surprisingly. I won't go as far as to say hot, but certainly warm versions of the Rover 200 that are well worth investigating.
Oh, certainly the BRM, yeah. And it was a well-engineered car, but it just sort of was misplaced, and I think they sort of partly rectified it when they launched. Was it the 45 that was a little bit bigger? That was better poised to tackle the Astra, the Golf, that sort of range, which meant that they could then sort of refocus the 25 a bit later down the line.
Yeah, no, I've got many fond memories of the Rover 200 over the years. I know we've had the ZR, we had a BRM on our fleet as well. Certainly I remember sort of knocking around in a couple when I was younger, and it's nice to see some 90s hot hat nostalgia in the pages of CCW.
Yeah, even if it does lead us to the very strange idea that if anything, Max Power is if anything a preservation magazine these days, which is a perfect point to start wrapping summing up this week's podcast on. Any final points to chuck in? I will have a quick flick through my list, because elsewhere we've obviously got the Z3 going up against the Mercedes SLK, which is a fun little feature, and The Way We Were heads to Huddersfield in 1981 with a brilliant dive into the street scene by Richard Gunn. And I do like this one. There's some great cars slotted in there. I think we've got a Princess
I
as well.
grew up in Huddersfield. Sort of my teenage years were in Huddersfield, so that frontage of the train station. I mean, it's not recognisable now because back in the 1980s, it was clearly sort of more blackened by the various sort of traffic dust and things like that. It's been cleaned up long ago now, and it's been properly pedestrianised. So, but yeah, I think there's quite a colourful array of cars there, sort of thing. With it being 1981, it's sort of like the 70s psychedelic colours sort of thing. So yeah, definitely worth a look.
Yeah, it is a brilliant image. I think we've got somehow 2 wedges in there as well by the look of things. I love that. They're so rare to spot on the scene as is, let alone 2 in one place. Anything else to chuck in, David?
I think it's really good. Lots in this issue. So make sure you go grab a copy on the shelves now.
Yeah, or better still, subscribe to never miss out.
Yes.
Anything else from you, Chris?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Brilliant. In that case, we will be back next week with another issue of Classic Car Weekly. Checks notes. We've got one more issue of regular Classic Car Weekly for it's our big Christmas special, I think I'm correct in saying. So we've got plenty of work to get on with when it comes to putting that together. So thank you very much for listening. We'll be back next week with another issue of CCW and another edition of the Classic Car Weekly podcast.
Thank you and see you soon.